So it's 6:35. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We do not have a quorum quite yet, but to be respectful of everyone's time that is here, I assume that everybody received the draft January minutes attached to the email that I sent out. So why don't, as we wait for Adam, if we could just take the few minutes to review those minutes that Joanna so kindly details out for us, and then we'll go from there. We can't vote on them yet, but at least we can review, and if there's any edits, we can make those.
We are officially thwarted, Jay. The phrasing of the bylaws explicitly says that a quorum shall consist of 5 members.
Okay.
Not related to how many active members the group actually has.
All right. Thank you for looking into that for me. Sorry
Absolutely.
to be arcane as always.
Thanks for looking out for us there, Jay.
So you are exactly right, Kristen. The group can certainly discuss items, just can't take action unless Adam is able to join. Or sometimes groups will just kind of punt and, wait until you could reconvene with a quorum. It's really the pleasure of the group.
Okay. Just let me know when everybody's had a chance to review the minutes and if there's any suggested edits or changes. Maybe while you guys are doing that, I'll send Adam a quick message and just see what I can find out.
Becky, can I ask a question? For something like moving the meeting time back 30 minutes so I could get my kids in bed, is that like a voting thing or just at like, I don't know, like do things always get voted on or?
Are you talking about like officially changing the meeting moving forward or as a one-time, what either?
7 o'clock would be what I'd be able to get both of my kids or at least one of my kids in bed so my husband didn't have to do it by himself. I don't know if other people would enjoy like finishing dinner. Like 6:30 for me is just smack dab in the middle of like dinner and bedtime. So
yeah, we've particularly as membership has changed, like with some of our other committees, I know that they have readjusted their meeting now completely different days of the month, completely different times. So there's definitely flexibility if the group wants to take that up. It would be something that, would want to have the group vote on.
Okay.
And, we've done some work like with doodle polls or things like that, obviously would hate to, unwittingly prevent somebody else from not being able to participate, if we had to change it to a time that didn't work for folks. But that's definitely up for discussion. And if the group wants to do something like that, it can absolutely be done. If you'd like it to discuss it tonight, you can add it as a formal agenda item. But since you can't take action, I guess you might as well wait until you can get the whole group together. And that can also be helpful when you're interviewing. If you can decide it, you can do it one of two ways. If you decide it now, that can be helpful with applicants because then you're telling them, are you free at X time? The flip is if you wanted to wait until you had your new committee members, then everyone could decide together. So, you can look at it both ways, whichever one works for the group.
Okay.
There's a Grimes family tradition now where every second Tuesday of the month, about halfway through dinner, Mrs. Grimes will look up and go, "Don't you have your meeting tonight?" And I quickly wolf down the rest of dinner, then run down the
Well, we can certainly readdress perhaps the time of the meeting. I don't know if we want to do it tonight or not. I'm not sure we're going to be able to vote. I did send Adam a quick message to see if he was going to be able to attend. I haven't heard from him quite yet. So let me ask this. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Okay, I know we can't vote on them, but did anybody have any discussion or any suggested changes? Okay, so hearing none, it looks like the minutes are good as is, and I guess we just postpone voting on those till the next meeting, correct? Okay.
Or until Adam joins us.
Sure. Okay. So I guess let me ask the group, what does the group feel like they want to do tonight? We have a good amount of discussion that we can lead, but of course we can't vote. So how is everybody feeling? Do you want to continue with the discussion? It'll be in the minutes, and then we can vote when Adam joins us, if he joins us, or the discussion would be in the minutes, and then we could vote in March? Or do you feel like perhaps it would be better to just discuss and vote all at the same time and just postpone this meeting until next month? Where's everybody kind of standing?
I think we should discuss it tonight, and I would assume that Adam plans on joining. Give him a little longer till at least 7 o'clock anyway.
Okay. How's everybody else feel?
I would probably rather wait and discuss when we can vote. Otherwise, I feel like questions might come up that we have to rehash a discussion again. So I will play the opposite end of that spectrum.
Can I request then maybe we skip through if we're going to follow Joanna's suggestion, that things that we might need to vote on, but at least given the fact that we're struggling now to find a quorum, I guess we're at the point now where if 2 members are absent, we don't have a quorum. Is that so? I would appreciate it if there is some sort of update on new member applications.
Okay, so hearing that, the things that so the school spreadsheet, that's actually Adam to update us on that one. The positions are probably the most important thing we need to discuss tonight, but we can't if we can't vote. New member application update, Becky, you can let us know on that. And then the sort of the goals and the priorities of this, committee moving forward, and whether we want to go ad hoc, that can definitely be a good, that I was assuming was going to be the largest part of tonight's meeting. So we can at least discuss that. We just won't be able to vote. So I don't know. Again, before we get into the update about the new applications, how's everybody feeling? So we have sort of a yes, we should move forward. We have a no, we shouldn't. And we have a half and half. Let's move forward on what we can discuss. So I need somebody to be a tiebreaker. Susanna, you are the only tiebreaker at the moment. So unmute.
I mean, I'm good either way, honestly. I mean, again, like Joanna said, I don't want to have to go over everything if we're going to have to again with Adam, but it might be hard to everyone's schedules to reschedule a meeting before the March one.
Would we reschedule or just punt?
Oh, I don't know.
I think we would just postpone it till March. We do kind of have a lot to. I was assuming Adam was going to be here because he asked me to add an agenda item for tonight. So I'm a little surprised that he's not here because he wanted to present.
Do we have his phone number?
I don't know if I do. Becky, I sent him a
I do.
email.
I'm pretty sure I do.
Well, Kelly, you're not a voting member per se, but maybe you can join in and give us your input is always valued. So how do you feel about tonight?
He's here, guys. He's here. Give me a sec.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, Kelly, but you're still valued.
Nice of you. I was going to say, I actually would.
Holy moly. Zoom was a mess. Could not get Zoom to work for anything today. I had to pivot over and use my phone.
Well, we thank you for joining because we did not have a quorum without you. So
Isn't this twice I've saved the meeting by dialing in on my phone?
yeah, we appreciate your phone. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Okay, so we already called the meeting to order, but now I'm going to declare a quorum. Fantastic. We reviewed the minutes. Nobody else had any changes. Adam, have you had a chance already to review the minutes? And if you don't have anything to add, we can go ahead and vote on those.
Yeah, I've reviewed them. I have no changes.
Okay, well then if I can hear a motion from somebody. Susanna motions to approve the minutes. A second? Give me a thumbs up, somebody, for a second. Jay seconds. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Minutes are approved. Joanna, we thank you for that. Your minutes are always very detailed and succinct, and we do appreciate that. All right, Adam, I believe you are the first person on the agenda. If you need more time to just kind of take a deep breath and get adjusted, we can allow that. Otherwise, if you could give us a brief update on the spreadsheet cleanup that we did and the publishing of that.
Well, if I could jump in, Kristen, real quick. Adam, you had a request to add an agenda item. So we would want to take care of that request here at the top of the meeting.
So we can add it, or I can save it for a future meeting. So the concept is, and if I'm going to demo it, I'm going to need a few minutes to kind of see if I can get it pulled up on my laptop, because I wasn't getting Zoom success on my laptop. But what I'm trying to do is something that we've talked about in the past, which is convert it to a Google form. Willing to share maybe later in the meeting, or I could come back to it at the next meeting, either way.
Okay, so I think I might suggest that we either do it since it's new business, I would suggest we do it at the end if time allows, so we can get through the unfinished business from last time, since we have quite a bit actually. Or depending on if time allows, postpone it to the next meeting. But how's everybody feeling?
I'm fine with that.
I see a thumbs up from Jay.
So Kristen, just for technical sake,
Right.
you would want to have a formal motion and a second and vote to add it. And then if we run out of time, then the group could always postpone discussion on that agenda item, and then it would automatically roll to next month's agenda. But if you want to go ahead and formally add it now, then that takes care of it.
Okay, so I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming Adam can make his own motion to add it. So Adam, can you word that in a motion to add, and then we'll vote?
Yeah, I motion to add a discussion about an updated intake form to the end of the meeting.
Okay, Jay seconds it. All in favor? Okay, so we'll add that to the end, updated intake form, if we've got some time for that. Thank you, Adam, I appreciate it. Can you give us just a quick update on the spreadsheet?
Yeah, I mean, all the edits that were received have been, kind of did a little bit of cleanup, and then went to the production and sort of replaced the existing, made a copy of version 4, replaced the existing main sheet with version 5. So everything should be good there. I did see an email, I think it was from Becky, asking for the updated link. Should be the same link as last time, but I'll go back and send it to you again, Becky.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Adam. We appreciate you cleaning that all up and getting that out, and everybody else for sending all those updates. Is there any more discussion that we need to have on that?
I have a question. It's on the A, school spreadsheet cleanup and publishing. My question is on the publishing. I feel, and I might be a party of one, that we should publish this in the Matthews Mint Hill Weekly. Full page, half page, whatever will fit that's legible, to get it out to everybody. Does anybody else see my point on that, or agree or disagree? I still think we're flying under the radar for the most part.
My only concern with it, Jeff, is that it's still somewhat of a living resource that we seem to be making changes based on new information. I would be a fan of a simple URL and it being communicated, that it's available and here's the URL, and rather than the data itself, just because things change and I think there's always work going on there. I would hate to release it and then, again, living data is kind of hard that way.
I was going to suggest like a blurb about it, but I don't think that publishing the data will be clean enough. I think that the data is still, to Adam's point about wanting like a Google form, I think the data would be hard to read in a published like newspaper form, but I think a blurb about it, almost more like an advertisement type thing than a like spreadsheet of it. I think a blurb would be really cool. An ad, if you're talking about taking out an ad, I think an ad blurb about it would be more helpful than the data itself.
Okay.
Becky, did the town send out like a press release on it? I know a lot of times the newspapers will just do a blurb with a URL based from the press release. And I thought I remembered seeing a press release.
Yep, a press release did go out. I would have to check with Maureen if she saw if it ever got picked up by the Matthews Mint Hill Weekly. I'm not sure. I can't remember that she and I specifically talked about it. I know that she profiled it in our newsletter, and I remember seeing the press release go out. So I can check with her if the Matthews Mint Hill Weekly ran it. The other thing, if we were to run an ad, it's a couple $100, so it's not a big mover, but the Committee on Education doesn't technically have a funded budget. So it would be something that we would just make the request to the board, to the town board to approve, Jeff. That's how we've kind of translated some of our committees, is to just do it on kind of an as needed basis instead of giving a standing budget. So that would be a little process that we would have to go through. But I can double check on whether or not it's already received any coverage, and that might help inform the group's decision.
Because if we sent the press release out and they didn't pick it up and run a story on it, what would be the next step if we wanted them to, so that we would not have to spend a couple $100 on an ad?
I mean, you can send the press release again. You can do a follow-up on your press release, right?
Yeah, I know Maureen has for other stories made like a targeted pitch, like an actual reach out to a reporter or an editor to say, hey, we got this going on. We'd love to see you run it. Sometimes they bite, sometimes they don't. But that's something that she could absolutely do if they hadn't picked it up. At the end of the day, short of a paid ad, we don't have a lot of control, but we can at least try again before we paid if the group wanted to, if necessary.
Okay. Are we all feeling good about that? Maybe just checking in, see if they did pick it up. And if they didn't, maybe make another effort to see if they'll pick it up. I feel like maybe, using money to fund an ad at this point we might want to clean it up a little bit more and make it, I don't know, I know we had some schools that requested being added, and I think we were going to plan to do that in March, I think was our time to update it all. So maybe by the time we check in with Maureen and by our March meeting, Jeff, if that's okay with you, I know we were going to kind of clean it up again in March. So maybe by then checking back in to see if it's worth running an ad if they haven't picked it up. Okay.
What I can do, I can work with Maureen to make sure that we've got the information. If they didn't pick it up, she can make that reach out between now and the next meeting. And then if they haven't picked it up or aren't going to pick it up, then I can also get some updated ad prices as well, just so that the group kind of knows what we're looking at cost-wise, if that's something that you want to pursue. So I can bring all that to the next meeting.
That'd be great. Thank you, Becky. Okay. Any more? Adam, do you have anything more to add on the spreadsheet?
I don't think so. I mean, the only thing that just keeps coming back to me, and it's kind of why I was working on these other ideas, is I just want to get for the next iteration, kind of get the process and the data cleaned up. You know, we got a good start. We kind of primed the pot, but things like, you know, there's a question about the percentage that meet grade level. And there's different versions of that, right, within the school data. And when we ask about demographic data, some of them have no data, some of them have it grouped up in all kinds of different ways. So getting that to a place where it's a little more usable next iteration, I think is kind of the next important step for the overall data. But as far as current data, you know, this development to production approach seems to be working pretty clean as long as everybody's vetted their data. I think we're on a good track to make edits.
Okay. And is that, I'm sorry, you keep muting and I keep asking you questions. So you feel like we need to kind of clean it up a little bit more. Is that what your, that Google form that you want to talk about at the end of the meeting? Is that sort of what that's about?
Yeah, that's what that's related to.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you for that. That'll be a good next step. Okay. Anything else from anyone in regards to questions or discussion on that? Okay, good. So the big discussion question for this evening is who is going to be running and leading this committee moving forward? So we had some great discussion on this last time, didn't quite come to a consensus. Everybody was kind of trying to dodge some stuff, but I guess we'll start. Joanna, I know you seemed, you know, like you were kind of having some fun here as secretary and doing the minutes and said that you would enjoy continuing on in that position. So have your thoughts changed since the last meeting?
I'm still available to do that.
Okay.
To.
Appreciate it. All right. So Joanna is nominated for the position as secretary. Is there anybody else that would like to either nominate or self-nominate for that position?
This was for secretary.
This is for secretary. Okay, well, thank you, Joanna, because everyone else is going to stay silent. So we do appreciate it. So I guess
go ahead and do a vote. Do a nomination and a second and a vote just to make it official. And
excellent.
That individually for each position, that'd be fine.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Becky, for keeping us on track with that. All right, so I hear a motion for Joanna to be voted as secretary. Do I have a second for that? Okay, I see Adam and Susanna, but Adam, I think, got to it first. So second by Adam, and then all in favor of Joanna as secretary? Okay, excellent, unanimous. Appreciate it, Joanna. Okay, and then I know for vice chair, Susanna, you had kind of shared some interest in either the vice chair or the chair position. Would you like to kind of share your thoughts on how you're feeling this time around?
Yeah, I'd still love to help out with vice chair. I'd love to just be more involved. I don't think that I could go full throttle and be chair. I think you're doing a really good job tonight leading the meeting. But I would really love to be more involved and step up. But that might be where it stops for me.
Okay. Oh, I just realized we're missing Jenny too. I totally missed that. Yeah, we're missing Jenny as well. Okay. Okay, so thank you, Susanna, for that. So Susanna for vice chair. Is there anybody else who would like to nominate or self-nominate for vice chair? Jay got directive from his wife that he's not allowed to speak, so I understand that. Happy marriage, right? Okay. That's what he told us last time, Jeff. He said, my wife has informed me that I better not.
Okay.
All right, so hearing silence, motion to approve Susanna as vice chair. I need a second, please. Adam is the second. All in favor? Excellent. All right, thank you, Susanna, for stepping up. We do appreciate it. Okay, and that leaves the chair position, which I think kind kind of everybody dodged the last time and nominated me. I tried to nominate some others and was respectfully declined. So it ended up just as me in the window for this. So I've taken some time. I know Erin filled us in about her time commitment, and I've taken some time to think about it. And I think that, if anybody else wanted it, I would be happy to, let them do that. But if nobody else is interested in it, we definitely need a chair. So I'll be happy to step in and fill that role if no one else wants to jump into it. Becky seems to be keeping me in line, so I'm all right. I got some back.
I'm just going to go ahead and second Kristen, so I can second every motion here. So we'll make a motion to nominate Kristen for lead, and I'll second it.
Thank you, Adam. All right, so we've got. I don't know if we had a motion though. We got a second, but Joanna motioned. Okay, I was like, wait, I'm not sure. We skipped a step. All right, Joanna motioned. Adam second. Vote please. Okay, excellent. So we can move forward now.
Congratulations.
We have a committee lead for all of our positions. So thank you, Suzanne and Joanna, too, for kind of helping us out here and stepping up to the plate. I do appreciate it. Okay, so excellent. We're making some good time on this agenda as well. So Becky, if you could give us an update. I know I saw it in the newsletter. I think I saw it somewhere else too. Oh, Facebook. I saw it on Facebook and I saw it in the newsletter. But can you give us a little bit of update on how we're doing with the new member applications, when they're due? And
Yeah, so I've not checked with our town clerk to see how many, if any, that we've received, but we are continuing to accept applications through the 12th. So I know that they'll do additional pushes. The nice thing sometimes is when they're advertising for multiple committee openings like they are right now, it can kind of get a little bit more attention. So often we'll see folks kind of put in for multiple at one time. So I can update the group instead of you having to wait until March. Kristen and Susanna, I'll work with both of you to make sure that you're getting those applications once the round closes on the 12th, and then you can decide how to move forward. And I can work with both of you offline a little bit as far as, just kind of confirming how you want to proceed with reviewing those applications. Each committee does it a little bit different as far as your level of involvement versus the entire committee's level of involvement. So it's really up to the group. But that once you have some recommendations from this group, then that will go to the town board for official approval. And then hopefully we can get some new folks seated pretty soon. So just give it a couple more days and we'll get that closed out and we can start rolling with it.
okay, excellent, good. I hope we get some good, some strong applications from that. So I did see all those ads go out, so that's fantastic. Now let me ask the group. I know before, when we originally were trying to look at applications, and that was some odd months ago, I think the group had voted to have Erin and I just go through those applications, decide who to interview, do the interviews, and then bring the recommendations back to the group for voting. Is that still how you all want to handle it? Do you want us to kind of, look through those and decide and interview behind the scenes and then bring them back to you? Or how does the group want to do that?
Can you say the question again?
So before, when we were going to start vetting new members, the group had voted to have Erin and I just receive those member applications from Becky, look at them, do the interviews, and then bring it back to the group for voting. So that, or the other option is the entire group interviews the candidates and goes through those applications. So either Susanna and I can do the interviews and bring it back, or we can all set up an interview with applicants. And it's I don't really have a preference. It's how the group wants to best use their time and do it, but I don't have a preference. So I'm opening it up to everybody.
I'm going to say, especially as the group is, when the group is, it's hard to get that many people together, right? So I would tend to lean towards the leadership of the committee, bring the creme de la creme that you want for consideration back here. We'll discuss it, make a decision, move on.
I'm just curious, like how, because I'm such a like rubric oriented person, like how is that getting decided? Like I think one thing is we're really missing diversity on this board. We don't have any people of color on this board now that Aaron has left. And so I just, it's not that I don't have trust in the leadership. I just come from a very rubric, like, well, what are we looking for? So that would be my question is like, are we deciding as a committee on like what we value in someone, or is it what was used to pick us? Like, I don't know what was used to pick us. Just like, oh, I made a good impression that night. Or do we like, would it be possible for us as a committee to see all of the applicants and then kind of vote on the top and then let you guys? Or I agree that I don't think the interview needs to be all of us, but I think there's value in more than two voices kind of choosing if we haven't necessarily set the criteria as a group.
If I can jump in, there is a little bit of guidance in the bylaws about what a member should have. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. So it's right here, that top paragraph. So Joanna and the group, if you want to look at that real quick and see if that addresses your concerns or if you want to build off of that.
And I think that what we could do, Joanna, is we could bring the applications back to the committee and we all can review them and decide who we want to interview. And then for the sake of time, Susanna and I could just interview them. But we as a committee could decide on, well, these are the reasons why we pick who we pick to interview.
I think that makes a certain amount of sense. And Joanna, I appreciate what you say about, although we certainly trust our leadership, the numbers always help diversity, no matter who's in the leader. And I think that makes sense to me that we share the applications with everybody. And as a committee, perhaps if we want to use a rubric, there's a couple things in that description that Becky just showed us that we could easily pull for a couple indices, but also we could add things like diversity and if we wanted, and again, I don't want to micromanage the leadership because I certainly trust the leadership, but if the committee wanted, we could also sketch out some questions. Because one thing they always tell you as well in diversity training is make sure each applicant is treated the same, even if you're you're asking the exact same questions. It does help level the playing field.
Okay, I feel good with that. How does there, any further discussion? So what we'll do is, Becky, once you have the applications, maybe perhaps get those to Susanna and I can add them in when I send out the Zoom link and the agenda, and everybody can kind of review those ahead of time too and start thinking about some things. And then we'll just discuss it and go from there. Does that sound good to everybody?
Would it be okay, Jay, you're speaking my language with the rubric. Jay, would you be willing, or whoever else, to, and I'd be happy to, like, just work on a quick rubric, putting those things into a rubric and maybe adding some questions, and we could share them at the March meeting for everyone to look over, and that way we have those kind of ready offline. Would that be okay?
Joanna, maybe you and I can work on that together. And then Becky, it's been a while since I somewhere have a stack of papers with the bylaws from March 2019 or something. Would you mind sharing the bylaws with us again? And in fact, maybe just put it, I think we all still have access to the Google Drive just as a nice repository so we don't have to go hunting through emails in the future. It's because I think, Joanna, you and I can probably pretty quickly come up with a 4 or 5 item rubric, and that could also, once the committee, if the committee likes those and tweaks those can also guide the interview questions, because everything will go back to that rubric.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. Gives us an objective way of screening applicants. I think that's great.
And in the creation of the rubric, that good question, that helps us as the existing committee establish what our shared priorities are for new membership.
And Jeff or Becky, does anybody have a copy of the questions that were asked to us?
Probably.
Because that may help as well, because those were questions that the town board used for us. So we may want to use some of those exact same questions. So if we could perhaps try to find those, that might help as well.
As I recall, each commissioner had a question or two, but they weren't staged or prepared ahead of time. So they might have been off the cuff, but we based the initial interview on the resume and the application, the qualifications. We did not know, and where they lived. We did not know the color of their skin at the time before we called them in, obviously. But I might not have preset questions. I have a file, though, I can easily look at.
Okay.
I'll double check with our clerk and see, because if there was anything prepared ahead of time, it would have been sent to her and she would have likely made the copies for the group. And I know she keeps really good records, so she can at least double check. But it sounds like what Jeff is describing may not have been that formal, but it's at least worth a scrub to see. And if she's able to come up with anything, I'll definitely send it along.
Appreciate it. That's great. And Jay and Joanna, if you guys are going to work on that rubric, if you could, let's see, hold on, let me pause for a minute in my thinking. So those applications come back on the 12th. Becky, is that something that you think we'll be ready to discuss at our March meeting?
As far as being able to get the applications to this group ahead of time?
Yeah, so that we would be able to, okay. So I guess then my request then to Jay and Joanna would be if you guys can just get the rubric back to Susanna and I so that I could add it to the agenda, or so that I can add it to the email that I send out to the group with the agenda so that people can again start looking at that beforehand.
Good idea.
I did find a Google Doc that I made before I interviewed, and it has two questions. It has why and what kind of educational community do you see in Matthews in the future? So
that's a deep question right there, man.
That's a good one.
I think the question was, why do you want to be on the committee?
Yeah.
On this high-paying job.
Because I love these people.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I appreciate it. So I think we've got a good solid moving forward for March in regards to gathering all those applications, reviewing a rubric, and deciding where we want to go from there. So good. Any other thoughts? Okay, great. I appreciate it, guys. Okay, so that leaves us at the committee's goals and priorities. This is something I feel rather passionate about, to be honest. So I'm going to let everybody else talk and chime in at the end because I've got quite a lot to say in regards to this. So I know Becky mentioned that there was some interest or maybe a recommendation of us going as an ad hoc committee, which I think really doesn't change too much other than it gives us the flexibility of whether or not we meet every single month. I'm not sure how else it changes. But from that discussion, we all started to think about, well, now that we have the school resource guide sort of published, what else may we want to do, or where else do we want to go? Especially now that we're going to have some new members and some new leadership, is there another direction that we want to go? Is there more that we want to tackle? We learned a lot, I think, with developing the school resource guide. And then when COVID came up, boy, we learned a whole lot more in regards to getting everybody access to school and resources and what they needed. So it's been a good year, 2 years. I'm not sure how long it's been now, but we've learned a lot and we've gotten a lot accomplished. And now that we sort of have that draft or the final draft or whatever we want to word it as published to the school resource guide, where do we want to go from here, or what are our thoughts? And what I really want to do at this point, if the group can sort of humor me, is I really want anybody and everybody to just throw out anything that they have. And I don't necessarily want to cut anything out at this point. I really want this to be a pretty free-flowing, open brainstorm session. So no judgment, right? Anything goes. It could be as wild, as crazy, just anything. Let's just throw anything out there. And this isn't the time really to start cutting or analyzing or trying to decide. I would love to get sort of a, exhaustive list of anything that's on anybody's mind. And then after we have that list, we can discuss and dwindle down if needed from there. But I would love to just really open, free, brainstorm, anything goes, right? Don't hold back. And let's just see, where we might want to go in the next year. And I'm gonna save my comments for the end because I've got quite a bit to say.
Wow.
I just want to, as a secretary, this is worrying me that I will not be able to write things down as fast as people say. So I do just want to ask that maybe people write their own things down, and I will make a Google Doc. I don't know if we're planning tonight to make a decision, or I will need more brainstorming time, I think, to be honest. So I'd love to hear people's, but then I'd also love to have some I'm a free brainstorm. So with that, Kristen, I don't know if we're trying to vote on things tonight, or does that mesh with what okay.
Yeah, I think that it depends, right? It depends on how long we brainstorm, how much everybody has to say, how passionate we get, how much discussion we have. We certainly do not need to vote tonight. I mean, we can talk about this we can finish discussing this at the next meeting. If we get to a point that we're ready to vote, great, but we certainly don't need to. So we can kind of, each person can kind of share and then we can slow down and repeat it for the sake of minutes, or somebody could throw it into the chat while they're done discussing and someone else starts discussing. So to make it easier on you with minutes. So we'll try to be respectful of that for sure. Thank you for bringing that up, because I know it's hard for your fingers to fly across the keyboard. So I appreciate it. So whoever wants to start. Jay,
Joanna, let me remind you though, as always, the minutes minimally, all they have to do is capture any votes.
Decisions.
The motions will always vote on the vote. And then if there's a thing that says, for 47 hours straight, the committee discussed this, that's all that technically the minutes need to say.
Yeah.
Sure. I just feel like in the work I've done with brainstorming, having a list can help it be generative. So,
yeah, I definitely would like to capture the thoughts. They don't need to be, a paragraph each, but I definitely would like to capture those thoughts. So thank you, Joanna, for being willing to do that, because I don't want to miss any ideas that anybody has.
I have an idea.
Yes.
Top 10 challenges of virtual learning during COVID. Turn it into a little humor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would be curious, about the path of credit. I guess they call it credit reclamation, I think is the word that CMS has used. And basically how I've mentioned this a couple of months back when we were talking about, the current state of COVID. And I was like, I'm really concerned about the post state of COVID. So if we're talking about things we're going to be talking about and working on and trying to get information on in 2021, these are things that would really be impacting the 2022-2023 potentially school year. And God willing, that'll be a period where we've made good progress on vaccinations and safety protocols, that students are back in the classroom. And we're going to have a generation of students that have spent 2 years with varying successes in their education experience, trying to get back on a track. And what does that mean for Matthews? We can't necessarily set the law for CMS. I know that that's difficult to say, but we don't run our own school system here, but what are the things that are most important to Matthews families that we should be voicing to CMS for that next step post-COVID?
I like that. So would that be top parental concerns for how to recover from lost time? It's kind of simplistic, but is that your jest?
Yeah.
Valid, very valid.
Mine is very like logos based, but just from my work in policy, I'd like to know what the issues are that the town of Matthews commissioners can influence. Like I know the town has a rule about like trailers, and that is something that the town is able to influence. But I think there are many things, to Adam's point, that the town can't influence. So I think it would be interesting for this committee to come up with a list of what legally can the town of Matthews influence at schools regarding school safety has been something, traffic laws, land use, taxation. I think that we currently don't know what the town of Matthews can do for / to schools. So I think that to me would help me then know, well, what else can this committee do? So
I think that's really interesting, Joanna, because that's the thing. We're locked into CMS, obviously, and so a lot of the policy type things CMS is going to handle for us. But if we're going to meet our mission of advising the Board of Commissioners, we need to know what we could actually, what would be helpful to them. Specific advice and specific things we can suggest that they could actually enact.
I do want to encourage everybody to, clearly CMS has a large framework here for Matthews, but keep in mind this committee is any education and all education. So that includes charter schools, private schools, religious school, right? Any school. I know we tend to make our thought process go towards CMS, but let's all try to remember too, it's the broad picture.
I just put in chat, would it perhaps be something that the education committee could do on an annual basis to release an education survey to the citizens to sort of do that pulse? If we could get into a routine of sort of doing that, like maybe I don't know if it's the end of the school year when we kind of release that. You finish the school year and let's get your concerns as discussion points, or if we do it at the beginning of each year. That's just an idea, because we're here to represent the citizens. Let's give them a sort of a managed way to structure some of that data into us.
That's a good suggestion. I would suggest the beginning of the school year, so that in the end of a normal school year, before they go on, they may go on vacation and their mind is off of it. So during the prior year, what values could be, however you want to phrase that question. It's good to have it fed from the citizens to us. Becky, would that be an online, again, a link where we would ask them to get online, or is that something we would mail out and would be cost to the citizens or to the government?
Yeah, I think it's really, are you looking for, an attempt at statistical validity with a true randomized sample, and then being able to, if you get enough of those back, be able to say this is, within X margin of error, likely representative of the opinions of our citizens, or, how we had done some of our citizen surveys in the past was a little bit more like, hey, anyone who wants to come take this survey. And so you end up with, certain biases in that, typically kind of the polarized ends of the spectrum in particular, may be more likely to act on that, or people with better internet connectivity, if it's a website link, or, there's all kinds of pros and cons, regardless of how you do it. I think the more statistically valid you can make it, the more likely you could say that it is very likely the thoughts and feelings of the community. But, I think what's interesting is it's like, are you just targeting parents? Well, that may be hard to do in a randomized way, because if we're just using address data, we don't know who has children and who don't within the school system. So, we could certainly we're working with Western Carolina on our regular citizen survey. That's something that we do every 2 years. It just went out a couple of months ago. So we wouldn't be due for that for close to another 2 years. But they're experts in this area. So they might have some ideas on how to reach the right target audience. And there is a cost, but they are vastly less expensive than some of the big, national polling companies. Western Carolina is about a quarter of the cost of some of the other quotes that we got. So it's not super expensive. I think the thing for me is I'm always like, what are we trying to accomplish? And then what can we do with that information? And so I'll just share with this group, with our Economic Development Advisory Committee, they've talked about doing surveys in the past, but it's always you want to be prepared to be able to take action based on the feedback that you get. So if you get, we're really mad at CMS or something like that, it may be difficult if our hands are sort of tied with how much action we could really take based on that feedback. So I think I would just encourage the group, if we want to go down the survey route, is I love Joanna's suggestion of maybe getting that framework of the areas that the town does have some control over. And then are you maybe focusing your questions in some of those areas that the town could actually make a difference if it got some feedback in that area? That may be an important way to frame the questions.
Yeah.
I have some non-voting thoughts here. And also I intend to sort of finish out the data collection project. So I'm kind of just hanging on till that's over. So thanks for letting me hang out. But I will indulge in my non-voting thoughts here. I think, first of all, I definitely think there's a role in this group to, Kristen, I appreciate your push around, we don't just support CMS, but I definitely think there's a role for this group in advocating for Matthews residents within CMS. And thinking back to the meeting that Aaron and I think someone else attended at Elizabeth Lane when they were considering changing the zoning and sitting in there and sort of listening with the ideas of with the perspective of Matthews residents in mind, and then reporting back to the board. That definitely feels like the kind of work that this group should be engaged in, and advocating for the needs and interests of Matthews residents with CMS. I'll also say, I think one thing that really stood out to me about that meeting, which was I think about a year ago, is that almost every single parent who was there was white. And it just really said a lot to me about who has opportunity to advocate for themselves and for their children. And I think this group really putting forth an interest in representing and trying to be an inclusive voice for all Matthews families and representing an inclusive perspective within CMS could be really powerful. And I appreciated you, Joanna, lifting up that this group in itself is not particularly racially diverse. Not that race is the only thing that matters. I don't know about class in this group, but I think there's an opportunity for us to really think about what that means for this group and how we can advocate within CMS. Because one other thing that really stands out to me about Matthews is that Matthews is an incredibly diverse city or town, and within the school demographics you really see how that plays out. And I just wonder if there's an opportunity for this group to dig in there and do a little advocacy work and think about that. Related to that, it's also my personal perspective that we educate our people to create the community that we want to create. And so I wonder if there's an opportunity for this group to do a value add in terms of basically like resources to support all the schools in the area. So I'm thinking about things like, hey, maybe this group like publishes an annual list of local scholarships, or maybe this group, like creates some partnerships with like people who do curriculum for like Black History Month, and we publish that and make that available to schools. So I just think that there's an opportunity for this group to like be like, oh, that's the group that like publishes that list, or like, oh, that's the group that, provides this thing that like our schools really use or really value, because it's a big value add to us. So those are just some ideas that I was kicking around here.
Thank you. All good ideas. Susanna, do you have anything that you want to jump out?
I think I mentioned last time putting together something similar, what we did for the K-12 schools for preschool, but I'm really liking kind of the survey in connection to things that we can actually change idea a lot more. But since it is a brainstorming session, I did say that about preschools. But I think that having some sort of survey just from like a teacher's background, like parents come in for end of year celebrations, or even like your last report card pickup, like something about sending home a survey, connecting with that randomized, or everybody. I'm not sure if that is something that would work, but I'm just trying to think of how to get the most data from everybody. I don't know, just kind of like a random thought.
Good. Joanna, how you doing as far as capturing all this for minutes? Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Didn't know if you needed anything repeated.
I have a question for the group. I'm a little bit unsure of it. It's not a suggestion for anything, but is it true that Union County, which is so close to us, Union County was in school during this time, or certainly recently, and Mecklenburg County was out virtual, correct?
Correct. Union County had some schools closed for periods of time due to COVID clusters. They did have some outbreaks. I don't know if it was spread in the school or just kids who had gotten it, and so they, quarantined the classes. So some of the Union County schools started and then went out and then came back and then went out. But Union County and as well, I think Cabarrus County have been in.
Okay.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this, I'm a pretty big advocate of evidence-based best practice programs and evaluations, and things that can be duplicated by other towns and other places as well. And I'm really big on not collecting data for the sake of collecting data, but actually analyzing and doing something with the data. So my interest or my thoughts are, so those report card data, right? We have all this data that is used to evaluate schools, not a rubric by us, but like a statewide rubric, right? So we have all this data now, and we haven't looked at it. I would love to see how are our Matthews schools, or schools that serve Matthews, right? How are we doing? Are we over capacity? Yeah, we are. Do we have enough teachers? How big are these classrooms? How many trailers do we have, right? What's our ability to expand? I see neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood going up all around where I live. All of those brand new neighborhoods feed into Matthews Elementary School, which is already at 1,200 kids. And Elizabeth Lane is too, for that matter. I'm not as familiar with Crown Point, so I'm not sure where they are capacity-wise. But we have all this great data right now, not only for CMS but for some other schools. Where are we, right? What's that data tell us? Where are we with safety? CMS did a great job reporting how many schools did not have adequate HVAC systems to get kids back after COVID. Matthews Elementary School was one of them. Since my daughter has been home, All her allergy symptoms have stopped, and she's off of all her prescription meds. And Matthews Elementary is a school on that list for not being environmentally safe. Those kids have gone back to school. Did CMS fix that problem? I'm not sure that I saw a report on that. Butler, I think, was at the verge of sort of being safe, not being safe. Those kids haven't been back in school yet, though. But, violence is one of those metrics. How we doing there, right? My daughter just lost her second classmate to murder. I'm not very happy about this. Traffic, Jeff, you've brought up safety in regards to traffic numerous times. Back to Joanna's point, what does the town have, legit control over? I would imagine that blocking up the streets is something the town of Matthews has more jurisdiction over. Than CMS doesn't own those streets, right? Or not only CMS, right? I have to go back and remind myself, we've got a new charter school, I think, going into Methodist Church, United Methodist Church, that could certainly change some things for Pleasant Plains, along with Matthews Elementary traffic, Elizabeth Lane, blocks up Highway 51, right? Those are safety concerns. We have all these great metrics, we have all this data, but how are we doing, right? How are the schools that serve Matthews, what are they looking like? And do we need to, again, go back and advocate for our families, right? And I hesitate to use the word control, because one of the things that I saw when we were trying to work with schools, not only CMS, I struggled with all of my schools, we don't seem to have a really good professional working relationship with schools. And I would really love to see us have a very welcoming relationship, right? So we have concerns and they listen to us respectfully and they say, okay, well, let's see what we can do. And then they share concerns with us and we say, oh, okay, I see your point. There needs to be a respectful professional relationship. I'm not sure I agree with, hey, CMS, we have some concerns. And their answer was, oh, well, we'll just take away your funding then. I'm not sure that was a fantastic response from CMS. And we said, oh, okay, we'll stop complaining. And boom, they put us back into funding. And I'm not,
sorry to jump in. I don't follow what you're saying about take away funding.
That's what happened last year when they put us on the bottom of the funding list because we had issues. And then the new mayor went back and said, okay. And then they put us back into the funding mix. That's not a working relationship in my mind. And I think, Jeff, you mentioned talking to them several times, again, brainstorming. There's possibly some ways to do pickup and dismissal different. Can we brainstorm? Can we work? And they just didn't.
I was in line to have a meeting with two people in charge with CMS to reroute Matthews Elementary, rather, straight through their parking lot, around the back of the community center and out McDowell Street. And that was kind of at the same time COVID hit and everything's been put on hold. But as an example, this is an advisory group to the town of Matthews. After we were approved for charter schools, municipal charter schools, that's when they cut the funding. And it's also around the same time when we formed MEAC, Municipal Educational Advisory Committee, which has CMS school board members and some town council member from the 6 towns. And as an example, that's an advisory capacity board, but we haven't had a meeting to address COVID. We haven't had a meeting to address anything. So I don't think, my personal opinion is they don't want to listen. They just want to handle it however they see fit. And when school gets back to normal, I'm certainly willing to pick up the traffic patterns of any school in Matthews, but it seems like the charter schools have an app where they know you're in queue in their pickup line, and they snake you around, and they'll bring your child out when you're in queue. Matthews Elementary is not quite as advanced.
So I guess I'll try to cut my speech, shorten it down a little bit. I guess what I would like to see is somehow a better working relationship with all schools, not just CMS, but all schools, not like, hey, we want this. Can you, just a nice, respectful, professional relationship both ways. I would like then for us to look at the data and look at the metrics and see, are we meeting the metrics? Are we not? And then if we're not, advocating for that. So or if we want to do a survey, that's great, but I think we have all the data that is evidence-based data. It's what the state looks at for not only Mecklenburg County schools, but all schools. So I think that using that data and those metrics would be very valuable because it would be replicable. So we already collected it all. We spent a long time looking at it. So I'd like to analyze it, see, for instance, what's the capacity of Matthews Elementary compared to McKee Road? There's a big difference, y'all. Let's look at some of that, advocate for that. And again, advocate in a nice professional way that's not, hey, me against you, you against me kind of a thing. The other thing that sort of became an aha moment for me because of COVID was there's a great deal of inequality in regards to classes that are offered throughout the schools. And I was hoping Jenny was going to be here because she's the teacher for CMS and she might be able to clarify some of this for me. But when CMS was sort of launching the full remote academy, there were a lot of, parent Zoom meetings so that we could learn all about how it was going and what was happening with it. And it was interesting because one of the things that CMS said that was going to be a really great benefit of remote classes was that kids that didn't have those classes offered at their school would be able to join another class from another school so that all of a sudden they would have that offering. And that was sort of a light bulb moment for me because there's a big catalog of classes that are offered to high school students. And I didn't realize that not every school has all those classes. So the classes offered at Myers Park are very different than perhaps the classes offered at West Meck. So for instance, if there's a lot of kids that need AP classes, then those AP classes are offered at that school and they're not offered at another school. So if you had perhaps 3 kids that did need those AP classes, they don't have that chance. And that, I believe, isn't fair because you have to go to the school that you're zoned for. You don't necessarily have a choice unless you sort of lottery magnet it. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck in your school and the classes that CMS decides are good for your school is all you have. And that really pigeonholes students, I think, into perhaps their future, right? If this is all that's available to them, Myers Park, I'm just throwing out schools here, but Providence, Myers Park, whatever, have these schools and Butler and Independence and West Meck and South, I don't know all the different school names, but I think that's dangerous, right? I'm not sure that I think that's equality. So we've talked about diversity and equality, and I think, COVID brought about all the kids that don't have hotspots, who don't have internet, not everybody has the same access. And I'm very concerned. Again, Adam brought up the point of what are we looking like post-COVID? And COVID brought up a lot of inequality, I think. And I would somehow, again, like to advocate for some of that, going back to what Joanna said about diversity, Kelly and Adam, sort of the post-COVID world. So relationship building is big on my brainstorm list, analyzing the data that we already have to look at where the Matthews schools even are. as far as capacity and teachers and violence and safety and traffic and trailers and all of that. And then just social justice, you know, and access to resources are pretty big on the top of my list.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Kristen, I like your idea of analyzing the data we already have and perhaps creating a summary. That's a good idea. It might be too hard for any one person to do that, but remember how we had the different categories grouped in and then the schools. Could we divide up the categories, one category per person on the board, and have them just analyze, you know, percentage of occupancy, and then another one does, you know, grades, and another one does safety, and whatever the major header groups are, I don't have them memorized, but wouldn't it be good to divide and conquer, and that way one is only involved in safety and can really dig in?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could. I think what I wanted to do here is just brainstorm kind of all of our ideas of where we may or may not want to go.
Okay.
And of course, if the committee's like, nah, you know, let's work on something else, then we don't need to further discuss that. But I think that if we were to go that route, then breaking it up and having different people look at different things would probably speed things up a bit.
Well,
Kristen, can I jump in? I'm sorry. Can I jump in for just a minute? What I'm hearing is that, because I think many of us feel I saw a lot of like heads nod as you talked, Kristen. I think many of us feel really passionate about a lot of the things you brought up, but I think that we have to realize that there are some things that this committee can advise the town board to take action on. There are some things that this committee could advise the town board to push up advocacy, like Kelly mentioned, like, hey, the town board can make sure to share anytime that there's a meeting. The town board can push on CMS to make sure things are live streamed. Like, I know there's a school board meeting tonight, and maybe the town board is always going to start sharing when there's a school board meeting so that Matthews residents can sign up to talk. But I think that before we dig too deep into like assigning people on committees, we really need to have a list of things that the town could take action on, things the town could advise residents to take action on, because there are a lot of things that I've studied a lot of this for a long time. There are a lot of things we can't take action on as a town or even as an individual citizen. And I just don't want us to get too lost in that when we're really not going to be able to take action on those things.
Well, I think if we share information, valuable information, and going back to Kristen's part, summarizing the category of safety in general, if it's divided into, you know, fights or arrests or calls for police service or whatever, summarizing that in some form is almost the equivalent of like the Matthews Minhill paper saying, sanitation scores for the restaurants, lowest score, best score, and, you know, then the middle of the road stuff. Someone's going to read it to find who's the best, and someone might take away who's the worst. You know, we don't have Granger on our list, do we? They've been bad in the past.
You mean Geringer?
Geringer, yeah.
I'm just going to push on us as a committee to be careful about when we use words like that and when we use ideas about violence and how they're reported versus how they are identified. And if we talk about, I'm happy to dig into all of this. Like, school to prison pipeline is a big thing for me, as well as suspension rates of Black and brown kids versus white kids. Like, I'll totally dig into all of this, but that's because I love nerding. Like, it's passionate to me. It doesn't mean that I can actually change any of these things by being on this committee. So, I'm going to push on us because I think we're digging into something tonight when we're already over time that wasn't the goal. So
I think Joanna and Kristen, both of you are saying some really important things. And I don't know if I think we're closer to the middle than different. I think probably we should look at the data. I'm into shoot. Now that we've done all this work, let's actually put it to use. And at the same time, we may not know exactly we won't know how we can inform the board until we know what the data tells us. And the data may reveal something that right now we can't conceive of the board being able to help, the town commission rather, but maybe there's something in there as we flesh out that data. And Jeff, I recall there's something a year or two ago with security at Matthews Elementary, where there's a conversation I think you had with somebody there, and that the town was actually able to put some funding towards some, so there may be ways that aren't apparent right now because we haven't actually investigated that we can enact change, even if in small ways.
Does the committee feel like it would be helpful if we started with, to Joanna's point, getting Jeff, what do we have a role in? So whether it's with how can the town commissioners advocate, how can we advocate through MEAC? I mean, it sounds like there's a couple of different ways to advocate. And again, it's not just all CMS. So is there a way that we could get sort of, where's the line for us? What can we have an impact in, and what would not be worth our time because we would just be hitting our heads against a wall on what we don't have an impact in? Is that possible?
I would think at the very least, even going away from impact, is educating ourselves and educating the board.
Or educating the parents.
Yeah. So I think, whether we're going to, Kristen, I think randomly picked McKee Road Elementary just because it's so close. But, if we're going to compare the data from Matthews schools to CMS at large and the state at large, just, for the most simple data sets, I think, how does this stack up? I think just right off the bat, if there's some big glaring errors, even if there's nothing we can do about it right now, just knowing that they exist and informing the board of what we see may help start the advocacy process.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's say we look at the data and Matthews schools are completely over capacity. Is that something that we can then say to the board, we need to advocate for another school, or we need to advocate for an addition to the school, or at Matthews Elementary, I think the whole 5th grade wing is an addition, right, or something. I don't know. I don't know how long that's been there.
Yeah, that building's been added to really in complicated ways for 100 years.
Yeah. So, but so I'm just taking that as an example. So, okay, we're over capacity. Can we, and again, it goes back to having a really good relationship. I don't want this to be we looked at the data and you need to do, no, right? Like we can't be argumentative. It really needs to be a relationship capacity building, issue of, hey, this is what the data looks like. And, I don't know, 10 years from now, does it look like we might be able to get another school, and where might that be? And, I don't know, I'm trying to think in healthcare, we evaluate the health of a community of, the number of dentists per 1,000 people, the number of hospitals, the number of pediatrics, the number of primary care physicians, urgent care, right? We look at, okay, per 1,000 people, how much access do we have, right? So I'm kind of using that same mentality of, if we've got all these metrics that the state provides, how are we meeting those metrics? Do we have a healthy school environment? And again, not just CMS, because we've got a lot of other schools besides them, so we have a lot of opportunity. But when we're looking at the education environment of Matthews, right, how are we doing? And I don't know, we might look at the data and we might be absolutely fantastic, but based on those metrics, where are our strengths? Where do we possibly have some room to grow? And how, again, back to Joanna's point, how can the town board or MEAC advocate for where those gaps are, right? We're going to come out with strengths and we're going to come out with gaps. and what resources could fill that, and what role then could we possibly play in that, is sort of where I'm trying to, what I'm proposing.
Kristen, I'm seeing a lot of passion and a lot of good ideas, and I'm so glad you are now the chair of this committee.
Thank you. I don't know how to do any of that, but by the way, which is why I need this committee. I got all these big ideas. I'm not sure how painful implementing those ideas are going to be, but I want to see us use evidence, right? I don't want to sort of like, oh, let's just do this, and oh, let's just do this. We have all this data. We worked really hard to collect it, and it's not arbitrary data that we made up. It's data that the state uses. So I just think I'd love to go through it and see, how's Matthews looking? Or where are we when it comes to the education environment and the education culture for our families and for our students? And then, to Susanna's point, I don't know, maybe at some point we're diving into the preschools and childcare, because we saw that be a huge issue with COVID, right? Who has access, who doesn't have, boy, now we're meeting like every single night of the month with all my ideas. But there's just, when we're talking about, whether we're ad hoc or whether we're a regular committee, oh man, there's so much to look at as far as what's our education environment for our Matthews families. And we can make it as small, we don't have to bite off everything at once, but I'm just wondering if we start with the data that we have, it just might be a good place. And we don't have to do this. This is just my passion, but we can certainly, this is a committee. We can go any direction we want to go. This was really just a brainstorming session. So I'll be quiet and I'll let everybody else, if you have other thoughts, let's get them on paper as this discussion can go.
I like your suggestion of analyzing the data. I would just suggest that, like we divided up the schools, that we divide up categories, major categories, and have people take one of the categories so that they can get into the weeds on that one category while others do the same on another. It'd be helpful to divide and conquer.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And Adam's over there going, oh my gosh, how am I going to put this all in a spreadsheet in a Google form? Because Adam knows we're going to be turning to him in a little bit.
These are becoming billable hours, right? We're changing the structure of the committee so that I can put billable hours on this, right?
And I see Joanna's note here. She's got about 3 more minutes. I think we'll go a little bit past 8, not too much, because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Is there somebody in 2 minutes who can take over minute taking for Joanna and then share the rest of the notes with her? Susanna, thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks, Jen.
Ooh, how do I do that? Do you have a doc, or I just take notes on my own and we'll combine them?
You can just take notes and
Okay.
send to me.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I want to make sure, I don't want to get too much in the weeds of a discussion here. I really wanted to just keep brainstorming and we can continue to discuss next meeting. So does anybody have, we've gotten some great suggestions that I think will give us a good leap forward. Is there anything else that somebody has burning on their mind that they definitely want to share? Because I don't want to end our brainstorming session too soon. I want to make sure we capture everyone's thoughts and feelings and passions.
This might not be relevant, but a reminder for the next meeting agenda to discuss meeting time. If it wants to be changed to 7 or whatever, let's make sure we address that at the March meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder. I made a note. Okay, any other brainstorming thoughts on where the committee might want to grow from here?
So a couple of immediate action items. Go ahead and bump my request for the agenda item to next meeting. I would also probably ask that people look at the data that we've been collecting. If you look at the final sources, we have columns with every school with no data, or very little data in some of them. And if that's the case, I would question if we continue to ask them, or if we continue to ask them, then we think about how we're going to prioritize them. So I just don't like asking questions if we're not actually going to do anything with it.
Yeah.
Right. Appreciate that. Yeah, no sense in collecting data if we're not going to do anything with it.
One, I think I got the data in for that new charter school at MUMC, Telra Institute on time. I'm not sure if it might have been after the fact, but they have a ton of stuff empty, but they're not open yet. So I know that's probably not the main concern. I think it's mostly schools not giving us information or us not being able to get it, but that is something to consider. And they were really excited to be a part of anything that they could help with. They were like, can we be on the committee? And I was like, well, do either of you live here? And they said no. So, so that kind of goes with what you were saying, Kristen, about having a good working relationship. They were like all for trying to be a part of this in any way possible. But unfortunately, neither of them, the founder or the principal for next year, lives in Matthews. So I'm not sure how that would.
They can move.
Yeah, they can.
We'll welcome them.
I'll just tell them they should move into their school.
Okay, well, I've asked a few times. I didn't hear anybody have anything that they necessarily wanted to add to our brainstorm session. I think we have a lot of good ideas. So for the sake of where we are with time tonight, does everybody feel comfortable if we dive into a deeper discussion about those the next time and then kind of, discuss and vote at the March meeting on where we want to head?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I have, so Adam, I heard you say for the sake of time, you are willing to just postpone your Google form demo till next time?
Yeah, that's fine. I can pick it up next time.
Okay. So what I have kind of drafted for our next meeting, then we need to talk about the meeting time, right? Of whether or not we need to change that or not. We'll have the new membership applications by then to go through and review. We'll do your demo of the Google form. We need to talk about the follow-up of a press release, if we're going to try to publish an ad, what we're going to do with that. And then, of course, this discussion on kind of where we want to go from here, which I think will be a great discussion to have as we bring new members on board as well, to just let them know, hey, this is kind of where we're going this year with this committee, and is that something you're interested in? And gather some ideas there too. I think it'll be helpful. I don't want to get too into it because I definitely want new member input, but I do think it would be helpful for new members to kind of know the direction of the committee on where we're going. So I think that'll be good. Did I miss anything that we discussed today that needed to be added? Usually once Joanna sends me the minutes, I kind of go, I'll go back through the minutes and refresh my memory, but is there anything really obvious that I missed?
The only thing I would add would just be the reminder that we would want this group to vote on what you wanted to focus on and then run that by the town board to make sure that there's buy-in and support before this group takes off again. So it would be basically voting on recommendations for next areas of focus for MCE. And then we can take that to a board meeting. I think it's a great opportunity, Kristen, if you'd be available for you to give that update to the board and have them start to get to know you. I think some of them definitely know you, but some of them may not. And kind of hear directly from you where the group wants to go. I think that may help with, keeping some of the momentum up. And if they have any questions, then you're available to directly answer them. So we can figure that out once we have the recommendations, but just want to make sure that this group knows it's not a full-fledged vote and then let's go. We want to make sure that everyone is in lockstep as we move forward.
Sure. Yeah. Good.
Kristen, I have a question on the over topic of goals and priorities. How did we leave it with the potential of preschool or daycare expansion in the future? Did anyone have a strong feeling on that?
That, I don't know, Susanna, if you want to chime in. That was Susanna's kind of thought on, we finished it with the schools and, whether we picked that up with the preschools and childcare. And I think that's one of our brainstorming options to further discuss next time. But Susanna, do you want to jump in and say anything? Because I know that was one of your ideas.
Just like what my idea was, or what it was just, I had just done a ton of research to figure out where my son will go to preschool next year. And it looks very similar to, not like serious, but very similar. And like, I'm on like a bunch of like Mom Matthews Facebook groups, and everyone's always asking like, who has the kids at this preschool? Who has kids at this preschool? What's this preschool like? What's the price? What are the hours? Like, all these things that would be really nice and like a little concise document. But I also made one. So like, I feel like we could start with that and just, it's not as like sophisticated as the one we made. But I do know that I mean, I don't have to deal with daycare right now, but I know like with MUMC closing, a lot of my neighbors rely on that for after school care and their summer camps. And I know, but with COVID and everyone working from home, no one needs that right now. So I think that might be something that we can look at in the future or think about in the future. But I don't think like daycare would be on anyone's mind until the majority of people go back to work and school is back in session. Okay. But it's interesting. I mean, I think it's all over the place this year. So does that answer the question? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important because I mean, it's been a long time since my kids were that little, but I remember going through, looking up everything, doing all that. I mean, it takes hours, it takes interviews, it takes visits. It's tough. So to have a directory of that would be unbelievably helpful. So if you and those moms groups could get on that, that'd be great. Have them do that work. That'd be lovely. And just bring it back to us when you guys all have that done. That'd be great. Because I know all those moms groups already have Excel spreadsheets. I can guarantee you. So
no one shared one yet. Maybe I'll be the first one to share mine.
Yeah, because they got it. They've got it. But yeah, it is tough to do. And I think back to Adam, back to your point about the post-COVID world, right? Like we need to start thinking, what's that going to look like? And, is there a way that we can help with that, as far as resources and directories and things of that nature. So I think we'll get in to all of that discussion at the next meeting. Tonight, I knew we would only have enough time to sort of throw all the ideas out there. And then I'm hoping that we can have time to dive deep for the March meeting.
Very good.
Yeah, I think we had all really good ideas. I think it's going to be hard to dwindle them down, to be honest. It's like, man, if we could have like 8 committees to work on all of them, that'd be great. I think it's going to be hard to choose. That we have dreams. We have dreams. So good. Okay. So I think we are good. Anything else before we get a motion to adjourn? Okay. Thanks everybody for making my first time through as chair painless. This was nice. You guys made it easy on me. I appreciate it. All right. So it is
all downhill from here, Kristen. We're going to make it really hard.
I know, man. You
got to get you into the position. We got to get you into the position before we come down with the hammer.
Oh, I see how it is. You're like, well, first we got to get her to agree to it. Okay, I see how it is. Well, you had me sweating there for a little bit by not coming. I was like, we got to have a quorum. All right, thanks for saving the day, Adam. Okay, so it is 8:09 now. So can I hear? Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
No, I was motion to adjourn.
He's like, look, let's go. All right. Second, Adam's our second person all night tonight. We like it. All right, everybody in favor, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't even vote now. We can't even vote to end, y'all. We have to stay on forever. We don't have a quorum.
You're stuck.
All right. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good night, and I will see you March 9th.